Hello and welcome to Lightworker Academy. I'm Michelle Hawk, alchemist, spiritual mentor, and shaman, and it is my great joy to invite you to this class series designed specifically for Lightworkers. This is something that I've been playing with over the last year plus or so. They used to be called master classes. I recognize some of you from master class world, so I know that you were tuning in then. But I decided that I wanted to shift a little bit for this year. So I'll go ahead and give you a little introduction into what's different about this year's iteration of these classes. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So today's topic is the 3 essentials of alchemy for lightworkers. And this idea to shift into Lightworker Academy was born out of a curriculum that I have created, or actually 2 different curriculums, one of which is I Am Alchemy. It's a year-long certification training course for alchemists through the art of self-mastery. And then this other curriculum that has yet to be brought forward, but it's coming in October, and it's called I Am Lightworker. And that's what we'll be working through this year, is working through the Lightworker curriculum. And I'll be giving you little tastes. This will be a live training in October. Stay tuned. There's more to come. I haven't officially launched it yet. I've barely told anybody. You were among the first people to hear about this. But we'll be spending a year exploring tastes of this curriculum through these monthly free classes for lightworkers. This is a class series designed specifically based through my 15 plus years of experience in shamanic work, in energetic healing practices, in alchemy, in my own intuitive practice. And these, if I could give you a class series based on the essentials of what I think you need to know as a lightworker, it would be this. So thank you so much for joining me. It is a great pleasure of mine to be back online and back sharing this information with you. So there are going to be 12 classes, 1 class every month for the year. Lightworker Academy is this free, like I said, free monthly classes. All you need to do is be on the list and sign up, which you are, which you did. And these classes, since you're here live, you'll have access to the recording right away. If you're not live, you'll still have access to the recording. It's just going to take a little bit longer. I want my people who are here to have first dibs. So in case you missed it this time, go ahead and put yourself on the list for next time. So we're beginning with the 3 essentials, which is our topic for today, since this is a foundational principle upon which the rest of the curriculum is built. And you'll see why when we get into this, and I'll tell you what we're doing next month. You'll be like, okay, I get it now. So the 3 essentials of alchemy is, if we were to look at, I already have the rest of the classes planned out. If we were to look at the curriculum of what we're doing, you'd see 3 pretty distinct themes. And that's based on our work today. So what we're talking about, I invite you to look at through the lens of your own practice, your own life, and you'll be able to start picking out some of these themes and these energetic signatures, since this is a foundational principle, not only in alchemy, but it's a pan-cultural principle. And we'll talk about how this principle of Trinity and this principle of the 3 essentials goes by many names. I'm betting you've heard it before. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. Before we begin to talk about the material, we're going to just do a little meditation, because I want to get us all in our bodies. I want to have us all on the same page energetically. So I invite you, go ahead, give a good stretch. Good stretch, good breath. And go ahead and set everything down. Set down your pen, your journal, everything off your lap, out of your hands. And go ahead and close your eyes if you like. And I invite you to fully arrive in the body with a breath. Exhaling everything out. Deep inhale. And exhale with a sigh. Again, deep inhale. Exhale with a sigh. One more deep inhale all the way into the belly. Exhale with a sigh, allowing your body and your heart and your mind to come into beautiful alignment. Continuing to flow with your breath. With that deep belly breath, inhale, and exhaling. Inviting your energy to arrive back in your body now. Wherever your attention has been this morning, or if you're in a different time zone all day, inviting all parts of yourself to come back to you now. With the breath, giving yourself a physical anchor for your energy. Inviting in the soul, all parts of your energy field. Inviting in the spirit of your consciousness, your imagination, your heart, and inviting the body to come into presence of one mind. And let's take a moment now as our attention is centered and relaxed to tune into each of these three layers of being. We'll start with the body because that's easy. We'll start with the physical. Allowing yourself as you continue with your breath to feel your physical structures. Feeling your bones, your skeleton holding you up, giving structure for your muscles. Feeling the workings of the internal organs. Maybe put a hand on your belly and see if you notice any activity there, any gurgles or working. Feeling your skin, the air, temperature, feeling maybe your clothes or warmth on the skin. Now let's shift our awareness to the spirit of your consciousness, the animating force of your heart and mind. What does that flavor feel like to go a degree more subtle? Feeling the energy of your imagination, the part of you that is paying attention right now. Notice what you notice as you turn into the spirit of your own consciousness. And now we shift our awareness 1 degree more subtle into the soul level, the soul layer. This is the very etheric body, the karmic layer. And it's very, very subtle. Feeling your awareness soften and quiet, knowing that when we're quiet enough, we can feel this most subtle layer. And as you feel all 3 layers of your being, bringing them into alignment with each other, bringing them into a harmonious resonance with each other. Go ahead and take 1 more breath to ground this awareness in your consciousness. You know what this feels like, and you can return here anytime. You have access to all of these parts of yourself in any moment. And I invite you to place your hands somewhere on your body, perhaps on your heart or your belly, where you would like to plant a little reminder for yourself that it is possible to be in touch with all parts of yourself in this way. And go ahead and give yourself a deep bow of gratitude internally for this practice. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for taking this space and time for this awareness. And gently, with a breath, bringing yourself back to your conscious awareness, rolling out the wrists, rolling the neck and the head gently, coming back to present time, coming back to the moment that is now, and when you're ready, open your eyes. And go ahead, if you like, make any notes about that practice. That was a practice that I would recommend you revisit to connect with these three principles, since that's exactly what we just did. And while you're making notes, I'm going to go ahead and launch in, since we do have a lot to talk about today. And I want to give you an idea of what we'll be discussing. So our outline for the day, we just did a little 3 essentials meditation, which you have the recording, so you may revisit anytime you like. But we're going to discuss the 3 essentials in alchemical philosophy. I want to give you a little bit of context of where are we coming from, knowing that this is not an alchemy class, so there are certain things that we visit in the alchemy course that we're not going to be getting to today, since they're a little esoteric and require calculations and planetary constitution and stuff like that. So that's not what we're getting into today, but we will be going into a little bit of a background of the context of what are we talking about. And we'll talk about why this is a vital foundation for any light worker. Again, this is a curriculum that I developed for light workers, for change makers, heart-centered people who are living on purpose in the world. Whether you're an established healer, practitioner, coach, yoga teacher, body worker, or whether you're working your change in other ways, whether you're a light worker in your family, in your community, in your career, no matter what that means to you, you belong here if you have a vision for the world and you're living on purpose. So thank you for joining. And I want to talk about why are the 3 essentials a vital component of that work, no matter how you're living your light worker path in the world. And we'll be looking at the 2 contraries of polarity. There are, again, the 3 principles, the 3 essentials of alchemical philosophy. And you'll see when we get into the energetic signatures of them, there's the 2 that play together in a really interesting way. And then there's the 1, the 3rd, that provides a context. And we'll discuss the 3 components and their unique energy signatures. I'll actually give you ways to interact with them, and some integration tools to continue to play with this practice. And very lastly, we'll spend the last couple of minutes on an invitation that I have for you. So go ahead and stick around for that. So the 3 essentials in alchemical philosophy. So when we're working with alchemy, we're working with the transmutation of anything. And alchemy is most commonly known as the process of transmuting lead into gold. But ultimately, that physical process is merely a representation of the spiritual journey of the practitioner. So when we're working with alchemy, we're transmuting a base matter into its perfected form, no matter what that is, whether we're transmuting something heavy, dense, think of trauma, think of, addictive patterns, think of an unhealthy body, whatever it is that is considered the lead, we're moving it through this process of transmutation and transformation to arrive at the state of gold. I'm doing air quotes in case you're on the phone, you can't see gold. And so this, no matter what that might be, again, moving through the journey of health, moving through the journey of healing trauma, moving through the journey of rectification, to make right. To rectify means to make right, is one of the principles of alchemical philosophy. So in the journey of alchemy, we begin with the prima materia, which is what the first matter is called, the original state, the gross, heavy base material, and we arrive at the final state of the philosopher's stone, which is the perfected, fully actualized state of being, no matter what we're working with. Now, the prima materia and the philosopher's stone are both composed of the three essentials. This is where it gets really interesting. What we're talking about today is present throughout the entire journey of transformation, in the original state and in the final state. So what happens in the journey of alchemy, which we're not going to be talking about today, but what happens is the perfection of these three principles into their self-actualized, fully embodied state. So these, the three elements that we're working with are known as the three elements of the above. I bet you're all familiar with the four elements of the below: earth, air, fire, water, right? Does that sound familiar? The four elements of the below. And alchemical philosophy brings in the three elements of the above. So here we're working with the spirit level consciousness of these three archetypal principles. And they're called sulfur with a capital S, Mercury with a capital M, and salt with a capital S. These are philosophical principles, not literal sulfur, mercury, and salt. We're not talking about the smelly yellow thing and the goopy silver thing and the thing you eat with dinner, right? So we're talking about philosophical principles that are known by these names, sulfur, mercury, and salt, and with the capital letters, that's how we distinguish them. So why is this important? Why did I decide, oh man, okay, this is great. This is really fundamental, foundational knowledge for any light worker. The idea of Trinity is a pan-cultural concept, right? So we know of this very commonly in Christian philosophy, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? We know of this in Egyptian philosophy, Egyptian alchemy, Isis, Osiris, and Horus, right? We have the mother and the father and the child, right? We have the body, mind, spirit, or the body, heart, spirit, right? All of these Trinity concepts is a universal philosophy. So we have this relationship with the three, and the three essentials of alchemy are a little bit different and a little more concrete because they give us tangible, functional tools to interact with and to relate to the three components. And that's why whenever we're working with any archetypal representation, they all have their own unique signature. And yet the three essentials of alchemy, the sulfur, the mercury, and the salt, have some really specific vibrations that are super helpful for a light worker who is bringing this work into the world. It also is really vitally important, and we look at the global picture, the societal picture of constructing a collective understanding based on non-duality consciousness, right? For anyone, and I know based on looking at who's here, I know that there are people in this very class who work in non-duality consciousness, looking at, okay, if we're used to either black or white, what about all this gray area in between, you know, how can we move out of this harmful, either this or that, the binary consciousness, into a yes and a multiplicity way of being, which is actually way more inclusive, way healthier for everybody. We relate to the entire spectrum in between. This is one of the underlying signatures of working in alchemical philosophy of the three essentials, is that we're saying binary doesn't work because it's not complete. We need non-duality consciousness in order to have the whole picture. So it's not an explicit component of the material, but it's an implicit one that I wanted to call out. It's also really vital because understanding the three essentials in any situation allows us to balance and work with them accordingly. So when I say in any situation, and I gave a couple earlier, right? So looking at, for example, our health. Our health has the components of the three essentials. Our work, our families, our bodies have the components of the three essentials. Looking at a workplace situation, there are the components of the three essentials at play. And if we know what they are, we have tools and we're empowered to adjust them and to work with them and to help them come into alignment with each other and with the environment. So I'll take a moment here and I'll just go ahead and pause. If you've got a question, either go ahead and shout it out, unmute yourself and shout it out, or type it into the chat box now, because we're going to be starting to shift into talking about the ways to work with them and the 3 essentials themselves. I'm gonna have some water. Is that all making sense? Yeah? Are we excited? Inspired? Yeah? Lit up? Cool. Okay. And again, if any questions come up, go ahead and just type them in the chat box. Easy. So the 2 contraries that we're working with, again, oh, one question. Yes, excited and inspired. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Beautiful. Oh, chat window, go away. Okay. Beautiful. So as we're working with the 2 contraries, 2 of these 3 principles work together in a very special way. And these are the sulfur and the mercury. Again, sulfur, mercury as philosophical principles, they play together in a polarizing manner. So whenever we're working with any trinity, we usually have 2 polar principles and a neutral principle, and that's exactly what's happening here. So we have sulfur and mercury as the 2 contraries, these 2 that are feeding off each other and creating a dynamic creative tension with each other, and then salt is the neutral principle. The polarizing principle, which we also see, for example, as yin and yang, is a really great way to look at sulfur and mercury, where sulfur is the yang principle and mercury is the yin principle. We also see this in feminine and masculine polarizing energy. We see this in the sun and the moon. This is, you know, very prevalent in shamanic tradition. We see this above and below. In alchemical philosophy, we see this in, you know, the heaven and earth duality. We see this in all sorts of things, the creative tension that results from polarity. And so, and also we just had an example of this on Sunday. We had the eclipse, right? So eclipse is really powerful polarizing energy. Did anybody feel the eclipse and like get thrown for a loop a little bit? Yeah. Brian is raising her hand. Okay. I don't know if the rest of you are raising your hands, but like, whoa, a little bit of a doozy because of the creative potential of this polarizing energy. We have the sun and the moon juxtaposed at these, you know, these creative tension points, just as we do feel with the full moon, right? Also any full moon and the eclipse, any lunar eclipse is also a full moon. And so we feel this anytime with this creative tension, right? The tension of polarity. And also new moon is a powerful moment of the harmonization of polarity. And so transformation arises from polarity. When there is movement, when there is a spectrum for energy to bounce around, it moves. But when energy is in the middle, when it's in a balanced state, it's in fixation. So this is why, yes, balance is lovely and kind of, you know, walking the middle path is really lovely. And yet being in moderation in all ways, there's not a whole lot of room for movement there. Has anybody noticed this? Or if you're in just sort of like your Zen middle zone, like, yeah, it's nice because you don't have the volatile highs and lows, and yet there's less energy moving around whenever we're in the balanced state. Does that resonate with anyone? Yeah. And so when we're working with creative tension, when we're working with polarity, there's more energy moving. And we actually need polarity in order to create transformation, because without this dynamic tension, energy doesn't move. So when we're working with sulfur and mercury, this is our dynamic tension. These are the 2 contraries that are moving energy, bouncing around with each other. And then salt is the neutral principle that holds and grounds both of these. Does that make sense? We'll go ahead and I'll take another little pause here if anybody's got questions or comments. Has anybody seen this in their lives? Can we think of any examples yet? Yeah, I see Brianna nodding as she's taking notes. Okay. Okay. Good. I want you to start thinking of, oh, okay, I do kind of see this at play. And I'll give you more examples, more ideas to play with, but start noticing and maybe jot down in your notes of like, oh, okay, I notice creative tension and polarity when this circumstance is happening in my life, or when I'm in my neutral all the time, I see XYZ, okay? So let's talk about the energetic signatures of the three components, the three essentials themselves. So originally there were only the two. If we look at the history of alchemical philosophy, only sulfur and mercury were recognized for a very long time, like over 700 years, maybe closer to almost 1,000 years in alchemical tradition. They talked about these two principles as the creative force and as the constitutional foundation of all things. And then came along Paracelsus. Paracelsus is a very well-known alchemist in the field who is responsible for spagyric medicine, for the foundation of what is now homeopathy. So homeopathic medicine originated with Paracelsus, and just as all modern medicine actually originated in alchemical tradition. P.S. We have alchemy to thank for chemistry and physics and the periodic table and all sorts of things that we enjoy in science today. So Paracelsus introduced salt as the fixed component because he was looking at, okay, well, I see the two contraries, yes, and yet it's not complete. We need a neutral container in order to hold the dynamic tension of the two contraries. So Paracelsus introduced the principle of salt. So let's look at the energetic signatures, starting with sulfur. So sulfur, remember, is the yang principle in the dynamic tension between sulfur and mercury. It corresponds to the solar energy. It corresponds to the masculine and the fiery principle, the active energy. So I just threw out a lot of correspondences there, but just remember sulfur equals yang. It also corresponds to the essence of energy. When we were doing our meditation, this was the most subtle principle, is the sulfur layer, the sulfur level. In plants, we see this as essential oils. Think of like the essence of the plant, the most finely, finely worked down essence of the plant is the oil. And it's the soul level. So sulfur, a helpful way to remember this is sulfur soul is the soul level, the most subtle layer that corresponds to our higher self. It also relates to our force of will, past lives, and karma. So essentially the sulfur level is what we come in with when we come to earth. We come in already with our sulfur. It's everything. It's our soul DNA. It's our Akashic records. Everything that we arrive in this body with, we brought from the sulfur level. So when we were tuning in, again, it was the etheric body. When we're thinking energetic anatomy, the sulfur layer is the very, very subtle, kind of most etheric outer layers of the energy body. And this principle works in conjunction with the mercury. And the mercury is our yin principle. Remember, capital M, we're capitalizing all these names. So mercury is the yin, the lunar, feminine, associated with water and air, sort of that flowy, drifty, passive layer of consciousness. And Mercury is the creative force. If consciousness is the creative force, Mercury is that layer, that blueprint. In plants, it corresponds to the alcohol. So if we distill down plants and we get the alcohol, the spirit of the plants, and Mercury is the spirit layer. So sulfur is the soul, sulfur soul. Mercury is the spirit, just like the alcohol is spirits, right? So the mercury layer is our spirit. It corresponds to our consciousness. our imagination, and it's the blueprint of our energy. This is the, sort of the heart and mind layer. It's our beliefs about the world. It's the lens through which we view our lives and the world. And the Mercury level is the mediator between the sulfur and the salt. The Mercury is sort of that attachment point. If we have the sulfur, which is the soul level consciousness, it's the very etheric body, it's the energy body, it's the high vibration, very subtle vibration, the karma and the past lives. How on earth do we get all of that to talk to the body, the salt level? It's through the Mercury, through the consciousness, through the spirit. So if we're sort of looking at the energetic density of these, imagine that we have sulfur at the top as the least dense layer, the floaty etheric energetic layer. And we have the Mercury as the middle, sort of the mental, emotional, belief structure, consciousness layer that is the intermediary between the sulfur up here and the body down here, which is the salt. And so the salt is the neutral component. So if the sulfur is the masculine, the yang component, the positive, I'm not giving like value judgment, but positive, like a battery has positive and negative ends, right? So the sulfur is the positive and the Mercury is the negative, like the negative end of the battery. Okay, so the passive component, and the salt is neutral. Salt is fixed, it's stable, it's not going anywhere. The salt is holding down the balance in that middle path that we talked about earlier. The dynamic tension between the polarities between the sulfur and the Mercury, salt is right in the middle. It's an actualized form. This is the other piece, is it's in a body, it's material, it's earth. So looking at elemental correspondences, remember sulfur corresponded to fire, the fiery principle, the fiery energy. Mercury corresponded to water and air, and salt is earth. And in plants, we see this as the structure and the cellulose of the plant. Salt is form and matter. It's something we can touch, something we can see. And in us, salt is the body. Our physical bodies are the salt level, the salt layer. And salt is really interesting. It has a dual function because it is both the container for and also the reflection and the result of the dynamic relationship between sulfur and Mercury. We'll say that again because it's really important. So sulfur is both the container for, think of it like a crucible, think of it like a bowl. It's again, the neutral fixed component thing. I got you. Okay, go ahead, creative tension and dynamic force of sulfur and Mercury. Do your thing. I've got you. It's a bowl. And as sulfur and Mercury are having their creative tension and dynamic relationship, it is changing the salt. It's reflected in the salt. So the salt, as it is holding these, it's also becoming the result of the creative process of sulfur and Mercury. And that is super important and super fascinating, and we're going to go into why. And it is because we have a body and because we have a salt component that we get to work with sulfur and Mercury. Because if we didn't have a salt, if we didn't have the body, it would be impossible to be in creation. It would be impossible to observe any changes in energy because we wouldn't have any neutral principle that was the result of the creation and transformation process. So it is by virtue of the fact that we even have a salt that we're able to work creation magic. And let's circle back to something I said at the very beginning about the Philosopher's Stone. So that journey from the prima materia through to the Philosopher's Stone, the ultimate salt, remember that salt, mercury, and sulfur are present both at the prima materia level, the unactualized base level, and also at the perfected level of the Philosopher's Stone. And the ultimate salt is the Philosopher's Stone, which is matter made completely conscious. And so I want you to go ahead and write that down. Matter made completely conscious is the ultimate salt. It's the perfected state, but it made completely aware. And this is really, really important. This is why we're beginning our journey, our Lightworker Academy journey, with the principle of the 3 essentials, because this is what we're doing when we're creating transformation in the world. No matter how we're doing transformation, no matter what method we have of enacting our own personal brand of creation magic, we're working with these 3 principles. And we're working, I know all of you are here because you have a vision for the world. All of you are here because you're living on purpose and you're walking your Lightworker path to bring more love and joy and connection and understanding and empathy and empowerment to everybody, to the people around you, to the animals around you, to the earth herself. And so we're working in this. We're all working through the journey of transformation, through that base state, from the base state, through the process of transformation into the fully actualized state. And so when we're looking at the components of the 3 essentials, we're looking at the salt, which is what is the physical representation of what we're doing. And so just kind of looking at who's on here, I'm going to call out an example, not by name, but looking at, okay, if we're working in the health of an organization, for example, if we're looking at the teammate dynamics of somebody in a company, and we're looking at the workplace dynamics, we want them to be healthy and vital. So the salt components of that are, what are the physical structures of a business that need to go through the transformation process? What are the HR dynamics like? What are the teammate agreements like? What are the company policies like? What are the bones of the structure, right? So that's the salt principle that we start with as the heavy. It's not quite working. Things aren't really coming into alignment. And so we work with the sulfur and the mercury. We work with the etheric, the agreements. We work with the energy. We work with the beliefs. We work with the life force of the people. We work with their emotional buy-in. Why is this important? How can we feel seen and heard? How can we create emotional investment? How can we create a dynamic where everybody feels really honored? We're playing with the creative tension of what is it like to shift the energy of the situation and have that in the container, in the salt of the physical structures of a business and organization, and witness it be transformed as we move energy around through the sulfur and the mercury. So then at the end, we have this salt, the physical structures of a business that are more healthy, more vital, people are happier, the structures are more streamlined, things get done more efficiently. And the creative tension dynamic of sulfur and mercury was the driving force of that, and the agent of change that we see manifested in the salt level. Does that make sense? Would you like another example? Yes? Okay, awesome. Let's look at through healing work, right? I know that a bunch of people on here are in some way in the healing field, energy healing or counseling or empaths, right? We got a lot of empaths in here. Okay, so let's look at somebody who is seeking healing for past trauma. Okay, so maybe it's manifesting in the body as depression. And I say manifesting in the body because it's a physically observable sensation and symptom, right? So it may be heaviness in the body, maybe the immune system is suffering, maybe they're getting sick all the time, maybe they have the energetic memory of trauma in the body, either through some sort of form of injury or something. And and we work with, so somebody comes in saying, I'm healing through this trauma. I want to move this energy. So we work with the sulfur and the mercury layers, and we also support the salt, right? So they get body work, they receive massage, they receive acupuncture. But we all know if somebody is working only on the physical level, it's not a complete healing, right? Where we have to address the mental, emotional, and the spiritual layers as well. And that's where we have the sulfur and the mercury. And actually, usually the body is the last layer to heal, because we need to work in the energetic realm first. So we work with the mercury layer around the beliefs, around the consciousness, around the coping with what happened, around creating a new relationship to the situation, around forgiveness. And we work with the sulfur layer of karma, of past lives, of how are we relating to this in our soul contract. All of this stuff on the karmic layer, on the sulfur layer, the soul level, and the consciousness level, the beliefs, the emotions, the thought patterns. So we work with those, and then we see the change in the body. We see people having more energy and life force. We see people feeling inspired, pain relief, right? And almost seemingly by magic. Well, it is by magic, right? This concept of moving energy to create a physical result where somebody feels brighter, where somebody actually wants to get up in the morning and participate in their lives, where all of a sudden they feel inspired to go exercise and eat better and take care of themselves. And also they're getting body work and massage, etc. So we see this journey of transformation of a person who is healing from a significant trauma. We see the base form of the traumatized body, heart, mind, and soul. And we see this journey of transformation that took place through the polarizing, through the creative tension of what is it like to move energy with intention between the spirit and the soul layers to bring full actualization that is held by the body. It's held by the physical person. Because it's not the soul that's going for healing. It's the physical person saying, I want to heal this, right? Like, we live in human bodies. We're sovereign beings. So we get to sign up for this and hold it in our physical reality and simultaneously experience the effects of it in our physical reality until we arrive on the other side as having fully integrated and healed this experience and feeling reconnected with our vitality. Does that make sense? Was that helpful to have another example? Okay, so with all of these principles, there are there's three. With the three principles of the three essentials, my invitation to you, and one of the most useful tools I can recommend, is to start looking for and identifying these three principles in your life. This is in your body, in your family dynamics, in your job, in your home. What are the representations? How are you finding and experiencing and relating to salt, mercury, and sulfur in all areas? And just start noticing. That would be the first piece of this. Just start noticing and paying attention, just like we did in the meditation at the beginning, the three essentials meditation. And we're going to go ahead and revisit that meditation now. We're going to spend a few minutes. I will take questions before that, but we're going to spend a few minutes in meditation to reconnect with this now that we've gone through the energetic signatures and cultivate a more conscious anchor to and relationship with the three essentials. Let's go ahead and before that, let's take a moment for questions. Anybody have anything that they'd like cleared up, or any thoughts or observations? How's this feeling?
I have a question. Yeah. It seems like everyone has yin and yang in them. Mm-hmm. But what if you identify more strongly with one than the other? Does that mean you're more in that layer, or how do I don't know if my question makes sense.
Let me repeat it back to you in a different way to see if I understand you appropriately. So yes, you're totally right. Everybody has the inner yin and yang. Everybody has all three of these. And quite often, I would say we do relate to one of these layers more easily. And so it would be a practice that I might invite you to do is to look at, as you're assessing the three essentials in all areas of your life, do you find, for example, oh, I'm really on it with my Mercury, like my heart and mind, my consciousness it's really easy for me to be balanced in the Mercury layer, and yet I feel like the karmic stuff and the higher self is all out of whack, and I don't naturally balance my sulfur layer. So that is absolutely an invitation to look to the dynamic interplay of the three essentials and see, what do we have a tendency for? What do we already have a strong relationship with? And what needs a little boost? And I can tell you from personal experience, and then also from doing this work with my alchemy students and with clients, we do tend to have one that we gravitate to or one that we relate to more strongly, or one area where we spend more of our attention and energy. So for example, if somebody is really in their salt, meaning their body is super healthy, they've got a great physical practice, they're really on it in the physical areas, their home's in great shape, everything's really tidy, their diet's on point, and yet their belief systems and their soul agreements and their relationships are totally out of whack. Right? So that means they have a really strong connection to the salt and don't spend a lot of time in the Mercury sulfur layers. And that conversely, and I would say I know, knowing healer types and knowing empaths, I tend to know people who are in the opposite, who maybe their health and their homes and their bodies are not doing so hot, or their physical reality is not really on point because they're spending all their time and energy in the Mercury sulfur layer. Right? And not grounding it into the salt. So an invitation, as we play with this awareness, as we start identifying, okay, how am I relating to these three layers? How am I balancing them, not only with each other, but independently? Then we're coming into this journey of healthy actualization. Does that make sense? Yeah? Does that answer your question? That was a great question. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, any other thoughts or questions before we meditate briefly?
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and hopefully this may make sense, is there's time, like you talk about balance, where I catch glimpses of what that looks like.
Can you say that again?
Catching glimpses of feeling of all three being in balance.
Yeah, great.
But for me, I get to that point and then I go, oh, now what?
Yeah.
And I tend to then freak out and be like, and then something scatters.
Okay.
And so it's being okay in that balance space.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and I would say also add to that, balance is not a static state, right? So think, for example, about if you're standing on one foot, you are still moving. You have all your little tiny stabilizer muscles firing, right? Because your body is in micro movement all the time. Or sometimes maybe you start to lose your balance and you like flail your arms to come back, right? We have a continually changing relationship with what is balanced for me right now, because all three of these will constantly be changing. We're not static beings. If we're static, we're dying, right? And yet moving and changing is the process of transformation. So I invite you to consider that as you're looking at, okay, how can I'm hearing also an invitation to cultivate, what is my relationship to balance, to being imbalanced, or in balance?
In balance.
Yes. What is my relationship to being in balance, in a state of balance? what does that mean for me? What does that say about me? How do I want to relate to this? And why do I freak out if I get to this state? What does that mean to me? And looking at, okay, and also balance as a continually changing state. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, beautiful question. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take one last question if there's anything else before we do a mini meditation. Feel people integrating this. That's great. Okay, so go ahead and once again, put everything down. Set it all aside, and we're going to do a version just like we did earlier, where we're tuning into the 3 layers, now having learned a little bit more about them. Okay, so I invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. And once again, fully arrive in the body with the breath, exhaling everything out. Deep inhale. And exhale with a sigh. Again, deep inhale. Exhale with a sigh. Once more, deep inhale. And exhale with a sigh. Again, shifting your awareness to the salt layer, to the body. Noticing if anything has changed from 45 minutes ago when we first did this meditation. How do you now relate to your body, to your salt layer? Feeling your skeleton, your muscles, your skin. Feeling your seat against the chair, your back, all of this comprising your salt. Feeling the air on your skin. I invite you to shift your awareness to 1 degree more subtle to the Mercury layer, your consciousness, your spirit, your mind and heart, your beliefs, thoughts. What do you notice now in the layer of your Mercury? Let's go ahead and shift 1 degree more subtle into the sulfur, the soul layer, the etheric body, karma. What does your soul feel like? Inviting yourself to breathe in the sensation of connecting with all 3 essentials. One more deep breath in. Again, placing your hands somewhere on your body to plant a little seed of reminder for yourself that you can return here anytime. Gentle sigh, bringing yourself back to present time awareness in your consciousness, rolling the neck, the wrists, shoulders. When you're ready, open your eyes. Welcome back. And go ahead and make any notes that you'd like about that meditation. It was pretty brief, but effective. So I hope that you return to that. And again, my best piece of advice to you to be integrating this practice is to just start noticing. Start thinking about you know, maybe there's a situation coming up, maybe something in your body or in your home or your family or your job, and start thinking, okay, what's the salt level of this? What's the mercury level? What's the sulfur level? Just start noticing. And I promise, even with that awareness, you will be able to come into a different relationship with these 3 layers and come into a different relationship with the situation itself. So I'm going to go ahead, and we're just about at time. So I do have an invitation that I would like to share with you. First of all, the next Lightworker Academy class is on the calendar for February 19, which is a Tuesday. All the classes are on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. So if you would like to go ahead and register, you will receive a link in the follow-up email that I will be sending to you right after this class. And you'll get first dibs since you're getting the email. So go ahead and just put yourself on the list for that class. And that one is about the medicine wheel. So we're shifting. Again, this first class was sort of the introductory piece to give context for the rest of the curriculum. And our first layer of investigation will be the salt layer. So we're working with earth level forces, and we're starting with the medicine wheel, which is a shamanic concept of working with the archetypal energies of the directions and orienting our lives and our work to the earthly and the energetic directions. So go ahead and put yourself on the list for that if you'd like. And the other invitation I have for you is if you are interested in I Am Alchemy. It is, again, a year-long certification training course in the art and science of transformation through self-mastery. I am currently taking applications and deposits. There are 5 spots left in the course, and it begins the first week of April. So if you are interested, please go ahead and reach out to me. I would absolutely love to talk with you about that. You will have a link to the course page in the email that you'll receive later today. So go ahead and ponder that. If you want to know more about the course, or if you want to hear more about what that is and have a conversation about whether that might be the right fit or a really great fit for you, then let's go ahead and put a time to talk on the calendar. Again, next class is the medicine wheel, Tuesday, February 19th at 11 a.m. And I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for coming. I really hope you got a lot out of that. Edie says, thank you. Awesome. Thank you. I'm so happy that you were here. Thank you so much, everybody. And check your email later today for the recording of the call, a link to the next month's class, and information about I Am Alchemy. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Thanks, Olivier. Bye.